Business success is based on relationships. Counseling success is based on relationships. Coaching success is based on relationships. Personal success is based on relationships. Consulting, well, you get the point. It's really about your relationship. That's the number one thing that's going to drive whether or not you are able to be successful in a venture in your life. How well you can relate to and connect with the person that you're speaking to. Now, this means that you have to harmonize. Now, when it comes to harmony and you're singing, it's about matching your tonality along with the person or choir or the persons that you're singing along with. So when it comes to relationships, your ability to harmonize with the person is critical. Now, this means that you have to perceive the person's mental state and adjust your approach to match it. If you're unable to do this, it will create disharmony. That leads to friction, it leads to awkwardness, and it leads to a resistance to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, whatever you're trying to do. In the end, the most damaging thing that causes is you will not meet the person's need. During any given exchange that you have with someone, there is a need present. The reason that they're speaking with you might be that they're meeting the need of loneliness, or they're meeting the need of having a problem. You want to be in a position where you can recognize where their state is and harmonize with that state so that you can meet that need. If you can do this, it doesn't matter if you're talking about your dating relationship or if you're talking about a company merger. You're going to be successful by navigating these relationships. Now, this applies again to any type of social interaction or client engagement. So in business, in psychotherapy, in friendships, in intimate relationships. The best way to do this, the best way to read the proverbial room is an acronym, E.A.S.I. E-A.S.I. In this video, I talk about how to use it. Have you ever been talking to someone and they inserted their own agenda? Maybe they started talking over top of you, and the thing that you were trying to convey or the thing you were trying to accomplish was completely crushed. Or maybe you're trying to talk to someone and they completely ignore your desires. You're trying to make clear what it is that you want and they're oblivious to that. Or maybe they contradict your mood. You're happy about something and then they come back at you with grumpiness or sadness, or you're sad and they come back at you with a flippant, non-caring attitude. Maybe they insult your sensibilities. You're talking to them and they insult you in what they say. These are examples of disharmony in terms of relationships, examples of not being able to read the room and do what needs to happen at the correct time. So let me kind of illustrate this with a story. One time I was doing consulting with an executive team for their company in the development of a treatment program. And while we were sitting around the table, the owner began talking about how he tends to be very energetic and very entrepreneurial and having ideas and coming up with things and starting projects, but he doesn't really see those through. He passes them off to the chief operating officer, and the chief operating officer is the one that irons out the details, makes the vision become reality, and oversees its daily operation. So they were conveying this to me, and I was not doing a great job of reading the room. So this is what I said. Oh, okay, so it's like you have the babies and he raises them. Obviously that went over like a lead balloon. So you want to be careful about the phrasing of your words and of the emotionality and the tone and the intent that you're trying to convey. Now, E.A.S.I is an acronym for being able to read the room. Now, one as I said earlier, this applies to psychotherapy, to counseling, but it also applies to any number of business type relationships and to personal relationships. But in the context of this video, I want to talk more in terms of psychotherapy and clients, because the psychological nature of these interactions is really what it's about. The E in E.A.S.I stands for educate. So there are times that a person is speaking, a client is talking, and they're describing whatever the issue is, whatever's happening in their life. And you need to be able to recognize that right now, in this moment, and by the way, these harmonies can shift sometimes multiple times throughout a session. More common than not, they're going to be pretty stable. So someone's going to come to you with a particular harmony, and you need to be able to match that. So with the educating, the E in E.A.S.I, you're going to teach them skills. It's time to step in and say, okay, here's what you need. You need to be able to do this, and here's how you do that. And let me show you some ways. Another thing that is very important with the E in education is providing resources, connecting them with things that they don't have that they need. Another one is troubleshooting problems. Maybe they've come up against a brick wall and they're stuck and they don't know what to do. And so you can be the one that steps in and says, hey, I've got the solution here. You need to recognize this is the issue that you're running into. Here's a way to overcome it. Bam, bada bing, bada boom. Now they're in good shape. Another one is empowering their abilities. You know, not everything is a problem. Not everything is a deficit. Sometimes someone is facing a problem and they have natural strengths that they haven't tapped into. So being able to empower that, or maybe just encourage them. Sometimes people just get discouraged and they don't have the initiative or the drive to move forward on something. So being able to kindle that fire is the key in this type of harmonious situation. Educate. Another type of harmony that you might encounter is the A, which would be allow. Okay, now, for example, let's say that you are meeting with someone, and here's a disharmony example. They are just done. They're done. And nothing's going to change their mind. Whatever it is, maybe they're set on making a destructive decision. Maybe they are throwing in the towel. Maybe they are about to do some things that are going to be harmful to themselves or to others, and they've made up their mind. There's nothing that you can say to convince them otherwise. It might be a time to jump in and educate, but if you try one of the other methods when they're in this state, more often than not, it's going to create friction. You're not going to meet with success. So there comes a point when you have to allow. You have to permit mistakes. Allow them to make that mistake. Allow them to mess up. Allow them to fall on their face. Now, in the context of psychotherapy, of course, this does not apply to if they're going to harm themselves or if they're going to harm someone else in terms of suicidality or homicidal thoughts. You have a duty to warn. You have a duty to keep the person safe. But sometimes in life, people just make dumb decisions, and you need to let them make that decision because that might be the very best thing for them so that they can learn from it. Part of allow is disengaging, is saying, okay, all right, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with this decision, but I'm going to let it play out. And that's really just where you need to keep in the tone of that session, in the tone of that conversation. Okay, you've heard what I had to say. Now it's up to you to make your own decision. Another part of this is allowing natural consequences to occur. This is something that I struggled with a little bit in the beginning of my professional career because I worked with clients and I wanted to rescue everybody. I wanted to fix everybody. But the problem is you cannot help someone who doesn't want to be helped. In particular, I was working with a substance abuse client. And if you're familiar with the disease of addiction, you know that one aspect of that is that addicts tend to be very manipulative. They tend to be very... it's just the nature of the disease to be resistant to treatment. And sometimes the only thing, you can talk until you're blue in the face, you can educate, you can empower, but the best thing in order to bring about change is consequences. Consequences motivate change. So this client, I tried to rescue them. They were doing all kinds of detrimental and damaging things, and I would justify that, or I would support them and try to encourage them to make changes, and it just wasn't working. Ultimately, I was trying to keep them out of jail, but eventually it got to a point where the only thing I could do is say, all right, I'm going to allow you to make this mistake. They ended up going to jail. They faced the consequences of their actions. And the next time that I met with them, it was like meeting a whole different person. They were motivated. They were engaged. They recognized the problem. They knew what they had to do to overcome it. And we got a lot of good work done. So sometimes you need to allow. The third part of the acronym, the S, is support. Okay, this is kind of the opposite of allow, but the harmonization part of this is when a lot of it is just knowing when to shut up. Sometimes people need to vent. Sometimes they just need to get it out. And so you might have a very productive session or a very productive consultation meeting or coaching session just by letting the person talk, because people are able to talk through their own problems and find their own solutions, and they just need a sounding board. So allow them to vent, allow them to be frustrated, show empathy, show that you care, but don't get in the way. Let them lead, let them take the session where it needs to go, and you harmonize with that and support them working through it. Okay, and then the last one, the I, is intervene. This is when you really need to do something. Challenge faulty thinking. Maybe they're thinking in a way that is going to be harmful to them or harmful to the business or whatever that might be. Maybe it's time to bring in some facts and figures and say, you know what, this really doesn't make sense, the things you're thinking about, or the decision you're about to make could be catastrophic, and here's why. So challenge that faulty thinking. Another thing is to offer alternative perspectives, and there are several techniques on how to do this, but essentially you're leading them to draw a different conclusion, because you are depending on the relationship type. This might not be true if you're a close friend or if you're in an intimate relationship, but in a business relationship, you tend to be, or in counseling, you tend to be more objective, right? So you're not living in the whirlwind, and you're not feeling all the things and dealing with all the things that they're dealing with. So you have a more objective perspective, and that helps you to be non-biased. So because you have that different perspective, you can guide them into seeing things differently that maybe they're not able to in the intensity of the emotion of the moment. So helping them, offering that the alternative perspectives, and then highlighting the issues, pointing out where the pitfalls are. And along with this, you want to be very directive. You want to let them know you're intervening. You're saying, no, this isn't a good plan. Here's an alternative. Now that might segue into more of an education stance, or maybe you might end the session after they've kind of rethought what they're facing with support. But overall, you have to harmonize. Meet the client where they're at. If someone just wants to vent and you're going, well, here's what you need to do, they don't want to hear that, and it's not going to be effective. If someone is making some really dumb decisions and about to do damage to their life, and you don't intervene, instead you're just going to be supportive, they're going to crash and burn. So you have to know when to harmonize, when to use each of the approach. And if you're careful and mindful and aware of the situation, it's easy. Harmonize, and you'll be highly effective. Fail to read the room, go against the grain, and the relationship will deteriorate. Until next time, don't just be transformed, be kinged.